now is the perfect time to design your fall garden. And the reason is that you can actually go out and look at it and see what it looks like. And if you wait until next spring, you won't have a clue what the garden looks like in the fall anymore. So it's actually a perfect time to go out right now and every 2 or 3 weeks for the next couple months and just evaluate the garden and stand there and ask yourself, does this area of the garden look good this time of the year? What is spectacular in this part of the garden? And what can I do to change it? And if you see areas that aren't so interesting, you can try and figure out what to do with that. And it will help you a little bit tonight. One of the things that I did when I moved to this garden was that I consciously made an effort to make the garden look good all year long, particularly in really early spring to late fall. So I actually sat down and looked for ways that I can make the garden look good at this time of year, and I still want it looking good in 6 weeks from now. And if you do that, you will end up with a better fall garden. So what is fall? Well, we have the official definitions, but from my perspective, fall starts September 1st. From then on, it's fall, and anything between there and snowfall is the fall season, so we're already into that. And the goldenrod is one of the key things for me. Once I see that, it's fall season. In this picture here, we have some obedient plants. They flower at this time of the year. They're a bit invasive, so they spread too much, not by seed so much, but by runners. But if you get this variegated version, it doesn't actually spread too much. In fact, my clump is now getting smaller. This picture was taken a few years ago and I had this nice sized clump. But the things around it have grown up and they're bigger than the obedient plant. And I just noticed a few days ago that my batch of obedient plants is getting smaller and smaller. So even though it's a spreader, you put big stuff beside it and it can't really spread. But this is a really nice little plant. It's got good foliage all year and nice flowers. So why are fall gardens not that popular? Well, one of the key things is that people get tired of gardening, right? We live through this winter period. Spring comes, everybody wants to get outside and do something. It's an exciting time of the year. You go to the centers and buy your plants, you bring them home, you plant them. Everyone's excited till about the middle of summer. Then it gets hot, it gets humid, and people lose interest in that garden. By September, we're all going back to work and school and getting busy with things, and the garden kind of gets lost and forgotten. If you want a better looking fall garden, you just have to keep gardening. I garden until about November. Snow has to be flying before I stop going outside. And we're coming up to a really nice time of the year. We get some really great colors, cool weather. The bugs this time of the year are great. It's great to be in the garden. Probably the biggest reason people do not have good fall gardens is that they don't go shopping for plants in the fall. Now, this may sound kind of silly, but nurseries bring plants in that are flowering because they know that's what the consumer will buy. So if you go in the spring, you'll see spring flowering plants. You go in the summer, you get summer flowering plants. Nobody is selling fall flowering plants in the spring. So if you want to buy these plants, they become available in the fall. So the great news is that your plant shopping isn't finished for the year, you just keep doing that. And if you visit some nurseries now, you not only get fall plants, but many of them are on sale. Well, what about designing for fall? When I sat down to make this program, I thought, okay, what's different about designing for fall as any other time of the year? And I pretty much came to the conclusion that there's nothing really special about fall. There are a few things to consider, and we're going to talk about those. But most of the garden design principles that apply for the other times of the year also apply in fall. And of course, you want to pick plants that look good in the fall, and that's what most of this program will be about. One of the things you want to do in a garden is to have some special plants. If you just plant the average things that everybody else does, you end up with an average looking garden. Quite a few years ago, I sat down and looked at pictures in books and online, and I looked for those pictures that really stood out, that were saying to me, hey, this is a special garden. And then I sat down and analyzed those pictures, and I came to the conclusion that in every case, there was something unique about that picture. It could be a unique plant, like in this picture. This is a juniper called Tolleson's Blue Weeping. It's a crazy looking plant. The branches kind of go in all weird directions. And I'll admit that only about half the people that visit my garden actually like this tree. The other half think I should rip it out. But I just love it because it's so quirky and so odd looking. That's the kind of thing you need to put into your garden. And when you do that, you do get better design. Here's a little fir that I planted about 13 years ago. Unfortunately, I don't know the cultivar name, but it is a Korean fir. Now, the way you know that it's a fir and not a spruce is by looking at the cone. Spruce cones point down, firs always point up. And this is a slow-growing plant. It grows about 4 to maybe 6 inches a year at most. Right now, I can stand beside it and it's just a little bit above my head, so maybe 7 feet. But what's really special about this plant is the cones. They come out in middle summer. They start turning a really beautiful blue color. They're still quite blue now, and as the fall comes along, they will lose that blue color. And in the middle of winter, the majority of that cone actually falls away and you're left with these vertical sticks, which are kind of cool too. This is a beautiful little plant. The other thing that's important in fall is structures and hardscape. So now this picture shows fall quite a ways along. You can see all the leaves are on the ground. So we're probably late October, November time frame. And what do you see in here? Well, you see the trees, that white bark on the trees, they stand out. You see the arbors, you see the pathways. By now, most of the plants have lost their flowers, they've lost their color, so everything's kind of a greenish, brownish color in the garden. But what stands out at this time of the year are structures, big arbors, nice pathways, something other than plants. Here's something I bought a few years ago, and this is a stone. And I don't buy a lot of stone. Most of it comes from my property, but this is one of 2 pieces that I actually purchased. This is about 5 feet tall and about 4 feet wide, and it's a piece of quartz. And it sits at the end of a long arbor so that it's a focal point. And people just love to come up and touch it and walk around it. And it becomes a real star in the garden. And it looks good all year long. But it really shines in those periods of the year when other things are not that interesting. So in this picture, we have a bunch of green stuff behind it. Nothing's flowering, not that interesting. This could be fall and everything's kind of brownish. This still stands out. So try to put something special into your garden. Here's a picture of some nice plants. Some are designed for fall, others are summer plants. If you're going to put some fall plants in here, put them in place that hide the ugly summer flowering things. Okay, plants go through phases, and they have their beautiful phase, usually flowering, and then a lot of them go into this ugly phase, and you want to get rid of them. And a lot of people go in and they cut them to the ground and so on because they don't look good anymore. The other thing you can do is just plant something in front of your summer plants that are fall blooming plants. And then these come up and you see these and you don't even notice that behind here is a whole bunch of ugliness. The one thing we have to be aware of is that some of these fall plants grow slowly. Here's a picture of a couple different ones. The 2 in the front here, the one on the left is a blue festuca type grass. And it's a cool grower. So in early spring, it starts to grow up and looks really nice. The one to the right is a tall miscanthus. And in early spring, it doesn't look like anything. I mean, it's little brown stubbles on the ground. And it won't do anything until the weather gets warm enough. It's important you know whether it's a cool grower or a warm grower when you position it. This warm grower that's ugly in the spring, I try to move it back towards the back of the bed so it doesn't stick out and you have something nice in front. Now in this case, the bluegrass is really a spring plant and it flowers in midsummer, but it's also a fall plant because it's evergreen. So it's actually green all year long. Whereas the miscanthus is really a summer or fall plant and it really is spectacular in fall. Here's an interesting one. It's called beautyberry, and I've grown this a couple of times. I see these beautiful pictures online. I cannot grow a plant with this kind of berry on. Now I get the odd berry and they are kind of pretty. They're actually quite small, so that this picture has been magnified quite a bit. To be honest with you, I don't think it's that special of a plant, but that could be my location. So my soil is a pH of 7.3, 7.4, slightly alkaline. Maybe it doesn't really like alkaline soil. Maybe I haven't bought the right cultivar, or maybe I just don't water enough. I don't know, but whatever it is, I cannot grow a plant that looks spectacular in the fall, although in books it says this is a really good plant. Now this one I don't have any problems growing. It's just starting to get a bit of color in my garden. These are the seed heads of a jack in the pulpit. Now they're actually toxic, so don't go out and eat these things. And some animal comes and eats these on me. So if I want to collect these seeds, I actually cover them up with an organza bag. It's a little cloth bag that's used for holding jewelry and things. And you can get them at the dollar store. So I go out in the middle of summer and I put these little bags on my plants so that I can actually collect the seeds later on. Now these aren't quite ripe yet. These will get quite bright red when they're really ready, and that will be later on in October. Even leaves can be interesting. Most of these plants are hostas. We know hostas are great in summer, but they also turn really interesting colors in the fall. Some stay green for a very long period of time. This one right in front here in the summertime is a very blue colored leaf, and then in fall it goes nice and yellow. So even common plants that you wouldn't think of as fall plants can look really nice. And that's why it's important to go out in the fall and have a look at these things. Now it's a little early to see them like this. Most of the hostas are still green, but if you go out in the middle of October and have a look at your hosta collection, you might find that some of these are better for fall colors than others. The other thing that's different with fall plants is that I find the colors are much more intense and they're brighter colors most of the time. So you get these bright yellows and whites, the blues of the asters. Whereas in midsummer, a lot of plants are more of a pastel color. Now that can be a good thing and a bad thing. Some people don't like bright colors in their garden. So if you're one of those people, you might have to select certain plants that aren't quite so bright. But I love the fall because I love bright colors. And these yellows are just great this time of the year. So that's really all there is to designing a fall garden. I mean, the other design principles are the same as designing any other garden. And on my YouTube channel, I have quite a few videos for designing a garden. And in fact, I have like a 14 video series, and it will walk you through a process for you to actually do the design of the garden. And it applies for gardens at any time of the year. It's not specific to fall gardens.